the Divorced Girl Smiling Podcast with your host, Jackie Pilosoff.
No one should have to go through a divorce feeling alone and isolated. The Divorced Girl Smiling Podcast is a production of Divorced Girl Smiling, where every show is 30 minutes aimed to empower you, help you feel validated and understood, and connect you with some of the best divorce professionals in the industry. So grab a cup of coffee or a glass of wine and start smiling as you join us right now for the Divorced Girl Smiling Podcast. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found and always at divorcedgirlsmiling.com. Before we get started, I want to tell you about two Divorced Girl Smiling trusted professionals who are amazing. The first one is the law firm of Klein Law Group. If you live in South Florida, these guys are committed to delivering strong and seasoned legal advice for men and women during divorce. They have been a firm for over 20 years, and they are dedicated to making sure their clients get the best legal result possible. I'm talking specifically about Kunal, Amelia, and Joe. They are the three divorce attorneys at the firm, and all of them have so much experience. They've all been divorce attorneys for many, many years. I have known them now for a little while. I trust them. I think they're wonderful. I've interviewed them. You can find them in my Divorce-a-Palooza interviews, and they're just somebody I would highly recommend. If you want to learn more, you can find them at kleinattorneys.com. I also want to take a minute and tell you about a wonderful therapy practice that has offices in Chicago and Northbrook. It's called Affiliates in Counseling. It's a group of almost 50 therapists. Now, I know a lot of them. I don't know all 50, but I know a lot of them, and I know co-founder Jason Price. I've known him for over 15 years. This is a wonderful, caring, loving, devoted firm. Many of the therapists specialize in divorce, after divorce. They see families, they see individuals, they see kids, they see adolescents. They're really wonderful. If you want to learn more, you can find them at affiliatesincounseling.net. And you can find both Affiliates in Counseling and Klein Law Group in the Trusted Professional section of Divorced Girl Smiling. Every divorce is unique, and every divorce ends up with a different kind of post-divorce relationship between the couple. But I believe they fall into two camps. You can either be friendly, amicable, you have a good co-parenting relationship, and it's all good, and even you could become friends. And then there's the couple that can never really talk, get along. It's always difficult, even after years and years, which is so sad to me. And my guest is a divorce attorney who has seen both scenarios. And today we're going to talk about 10 big divorce mistakes that she has seen that lead to the second thing I said, where you're just not going to have a good relationship. Maybe you don't get the divorce outcome you really want. You are always at odds. Co-parenting is difficult. And so we don't want that for you. We want you to have the first one. So we're going to talk about 10 mistakes and how you can avoid them. My guest is divorce attorney Tiffany Hughes. She is a managing partner of her firm, the law office of Tiffany M. Hughes in Chicago. Tiffany also has a practice in Florida. So hi, Tiffany.
Hi, Jackie. Thanks for having me again.
Always nice to see you. And do you agree with me that you've seen both types of couples? One is always going to be not good, and the other has a really nice co-parenting relationship.
Oh my goodness, all the time. I mean, it's totally different ends of the spectrum. And I think that's why this is going to be so important today is to really just set the stage of like how people can navigate through and how they can choose which side of the spectrum what end do you want to be on.
Right. And no matter how angry you are, how much resentment you have, it doesn't mean you're going to say to your ex, it's okay that you cheated and left me for your now wife. We're going to be best friends. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about you getting divorced and having a really good post divorce life, a good outcome, and a good co parenting relationship so that your kids are feeling healthy and loved and like you and your ex are a team.
Agreed. Also, for people that don't have children but are getting married or getting divorced, it's also about like being able to move on to the next new chapter of your life and not living in the old chapter, or like I like to say, people are inside the box and I'm outside the box looking in, and I know what's going to happen when you get outside. It's just, when do you want to make that step?
Okay, I love that you brought that up. And actually, it's not even just for people who don't have kids, even people who have kids. How do you move on emotionally from your divorce? You get to this good place of acceptance and maybe forgiveness. Again, not saying what your ex did was right or that the person was a saint, but to a healthy emotional place so that you can move on to the next phase of your life and possibly the next person, the next serious relationship.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's start with the first thing you said that well, let me back up. So, Tiffany made a list of 10 of the biggest divorce mistakes she's seen her clients make in her 14 years of practicing divorce law. And the first one is discussing settlement terms with your spouse. So, what does that look like?
So a lot of people are like, "Oh, well, I already talked to him and, I was telling him about like what I want and, and we've already like really discussed this." And I said, "I have no problem with you ever discussing terms of settlement. I think that's a great idea. However, the huge caveat, the big however, think of however in caps right now, you cannot discuss settlement terms when you do not know what your rights are and you do not know what it is that you're supposed to be offering." And I say this because if you go and make an agreement with your spouse and then you come to me and say, "Okay, well, this is what we talked about." And then I tell you, "Well, guess what? What you just offered is not what the law is. And that's really bad for you." Trying to go back and saying, "Look, just joking. I didn't know my rights. Now I have a lawyer. I spoke to her. She said no go on this." Yeah, so sad, sorry.
Okay,
Because
okay. So that's actually a really important point, and I would tell the listeners, tell me if you agree with this, Tiffany, because you're the lawyer, that it's okay to discuss the settlement terms, but you first need to know, like, run it by your lawyer first. Just say, "Do you think it's okay if I try to convince him to do this?"
yeah, I mean, you have to what happens is I sit down with the client, we go through everything, we come up with what an offer would look like, because they'll say, "Oh, I have I'm gonna talk to my spouse about this." Okay, let's get it together. Let's come up with a game plan. Then you can go ahead and speak to him or her about it. That's absolutely fine. But that if you don't do that, then just think of it this way. Think of paying your attorneys tons of more money. So I'm saying this because this helps you save money. I've had many clients that thought, "Well, it's going to save me money to talk to my spouse and to reach an agreement." Yeah, but not until you know what it is that you're actually
Right,
proposing.
because then your ex is gonna say to you, "Well, you said before that you would take this amount," and that you don't ever wanna have that conversation.
No, and unfortunately, I had a case where my client didn't listen, offered $9,000 a month in maintenance, did not talk to me about it, and then wanted to renege on that, and she never let that go. She
Mhm.
never, even to this day, they've been divorced, like, never lets it go.
Yeah. Okay, number 2, another huge mistake, not disclosing your true income or hiding assets.
So, a lot of people think that they can just disclose what they have now, or disclose at a minimum of what accounts that there were, certain kinds of accounts, and not disclose all of the accounts. And that somehow, like, nobody's going to find out about the accounts. The same thing with income, that nobody's going to find out about the income, when unfortunately for them, there's a paper trail of everything. And if you don't disclose it, eventually it'll be found. And when it is found, you are going to be responsible for a significant amount of attorney's fees, different kinds of sanctions, very, very bad things. And so it's not something you should do. Period.
And then don't you just then your credibility just went out the window and nobody will believe you or trust you, not your own lawyer, his or her lawyer, the judge. There's all kinds of people, maybe a mediator. They're thinking you're just like not trustworthy, and nobody wants to have that either.
Oh yeah. I mean, if that were to happen and say, with one of my clients and the other spouse did that, you better bet that every single time that we're in court, I'm going to say, "Oh yeah, judge, you probably remember, but I'm just going to, refresh your recollection of the fact that Mr. blah 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 or Miss blah blah blah, lied to this court, that your honor sanctioned him or her for failure to disclose assets and to hide income." And even though it may not be relevant at that exact moment, but the credibility is always relevant. And so I will continue to beat it, and to beat the point to the court.
Wow, I've known you for about 5 years, Tiffany, and you just scared me. I've never seen you like You're listening to the Divorce Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff, and I'm your host. Today, I'm here with divorce attorney Tiffany Hughes. Tiffany and I are talking about 10 big divorce mistakes you don't want to make. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we have 8 more. We'll be right back. Bryn Ungerleider has been babysitting since she was a preteen. Her love of children and her dedication to making sure kids have good, caring role models is what led her to starting her nanny and caregiving agency several years ago. Bryn is the founder of Premier Nanny Network, who helps divorcing men and women find nannies, babysitters, mothers, helpers, anything you need. I love Bryn. She is so dedicated and she loves kids and she truly vets her caregivers and her babysitters so well. If you want to learn more about Bryn and Premier Nanny Network, just go to premiernannynetwork.com. She can help you find a nanny anywhere in the United States. I also want to take a minute and mention a wonderful mortgage lender and certified divorce lending professional named Jan Leisure. I love Jan. She's a division president for Diamond Residential Mortgage Corp. Jan has been a mortgage lender since 1997. So she's an amazing person, great listener, perfect for the mortgage business, and can really help you during and after your divorce. And Jan also went through a divorce, so she understands how you're feeling. If you want to learn more about Jan, you can find her at diamondresidential.com/Jan Leisure, and you can find both Jan and Bryn in the Trusted Professional section of Divorced Girl Smiling. Welcome back to the Divorced Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff, and I'm your host. And today we're talking about 10 big divorce mistakes you really don't want to make. Great guest for this, Tiffany Hughes, a 14-year veteran divorce attorney. She has her own firm, the Law Office of Tiffany Hughes, practices in Chicago and also in Florida. Okay, Tiffany, number 3. And I'm so glad you brought this up. Frivolously calling the police for non-emergencies. Huge mistake. Why?
Using the police and calling 911 and having them come to the house and filing police reports for things that are not emergencies, just It's kind of like it's analogous to the like the story about the boy who cried wolf. And, you really want to make sure that your yes means yes and your no means no in a way. And that when there really is a situation that's an emergency, that you're utilizing the right resources. When you start like becoming like a whistleblower of sorts, I guess, and you're utilizing the police and filing potentially even sometimes they're considered false reports. Again, it goes back to the credibility, and all of these things matter. And even though judges are only supposed to follow the law, they're humans and they start to hear these things. And, it is what it is.
Okay, so this is why I said I'm really glad you brought this up because I think that people do this a lot. I bet you they do it a lot more than we even think. First of all, I think it's really disrespectful for police officers who really have to handle real emergencies. And secondly, like Tiffany said, then if something really bad happens, then no one's going to really believe you. So I want to stress though that if you feel really frustrated and angry, there's so many better ways to handle it than calling the police. And don't call the police unless you truly feel like you or your kids are in danger. But I do want to say if you even remotely think you and your kids are in danger, call the police. Don't let this conversation deter you from calling the police in a real emergency because that is really important. But Tiffany, what are some other coping strategies for somebody who feels so angry and frustrated and hurt that they want to call the police? What can they do instead?
I would recommend that, you start talking to your attorney about different ways to maybe leave the home or have an agreement for that. I mean, as far as both of you not residing under the same roof, that's probably step one. Two is coping with issues that are going on in the household and having like a what we call a play nice order, where everybody understands what the parameters and the boundaries are during the proceedings. Also, you know, we have a lot of great therapists, within, Divorce Girl Smiling, and a lot of great resources of people that can assist, during the divorce
Divorce
process.
coaches, divorce
Right.
coaches can be
Yeah.
helpful. But again, the last thing I want to say about this one is if you really believe you're in danger, you have every right to call the police. But you will know in your gut if you need to really call the police or not,
Yeah. If you're in danger, make sure you call 911.
for sure. Okay, number 4 of the big mistakes is not complying with court orders. Why do people do this?
So I think that they think that court orders are not something that is mandatory, that it's more of like an opinion of like, or maybe like, here's like kind of a roadmap of the things you're supposed to do. Um, you know, it's an order of the court. So it's to be followed. It's not to be, you don't get to dictate what you think the order says. The order says what it says and you have to follow it. And if you don't, again, this is where it comes back to hurting you in the process. And that the more, I want to say more strikes against you in the proceedings, the worse that it can end up being, because the court can take into account your credibility. And if your credibility is shot and there's a factual issue, right? Where, you are going to testify, your spouse is going to testify, and the court has to make a decision on who the judge thinks is telling the truth, and you're the person who, hides assets, doesn't disclose income, doesn't follow court orders. Do you think that they're going to believe what you have to say?
Right,
So,
or even like you, they're not gonna like you, so they're gonna side with your ex. I mean, it's kind of as simple as that. They're gonna be mad that you didn't comply. Okay, Tiffany, what about, the reason why people don't comply with court orders? Why don't they pay? Why don't they do the parenting plan that was put in place. Like those are examples of not complying with court orders. Why do they do this?
They think that, they didn't agree to it. They don't agree with what the judge ordered, and they decide that they're going to follow what they want and what they propose, and they don't care whether or not the judge ordered it or not. And
So they do it
that's the
out of
problem.
anger. They don't think it was right. They're being defiant. They have a lot of resentment for their spouse. So they're like, okay, I'll see what happens if I don't comply. Is she really going to take me back to court? And then when they do, you could be in big trouble.
Right. And
But
big trouble is prison, huge amount of sanctions in the form of money, paying for the other person's attorney's fees, um, taking their license, passport. Like there's different kinds of sanctions that the court can impose.
okay, but I feel like for some reason I never hear about these. And I know a heck of a lot of people who have a spouse who does not comply with court orders. And then there's no punishment. The judge just kind of says, oh, you know what? You need to do this from now on. Have you actually had cases where the person was fined, imprisoned, anything? I really hope you say yes because it seems really frustrating.
Yeah, I have. Usually what happens is maybe like the first time of filing the petition saying that they haven't complied, the judge will be like, okay, I want you to pay for the attorney's fees, and you're going to pay what's owed, or you're going to do what's owed, whatever it is, the things that you need to do that you didn't comply with. Then the second time rolls around and the judge isn't so kind. And then it just slowly increases. And that's why it's important strategically. What I do with the drafting is, you know, the petition for adjudication of indirect civil contempt is the name. The second one is the second petition, third petition. And I just make it very easy for the judge to follow along with me as I continue to file these petitions against the other spouse. And what ends up happening is eventually the judge, can issue what's called a warrant for the person's arrest. It's via a body attachment that gets sent to the sheriff, and the sheriff will then arrest the person. And then the bond to get out of court or get out of jail is whatever the purge is, which is whatever the amount is that, is due and owing. So yeah, yeah,
Or have you
all
ever
the time.
seen them take away like, okay, you're gonna not see your children until you can comply with the schedule, stuff like that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow, good to know. Okay, moving on, another huge mistake, letting your emotions get the best of you.
So let's just start off with the basics. Going through a divorce is a roller coaster of emotions. I've been divorced, like I have kids, like I understand all the things. But you need to be able to regulate your emotions. And if you don't, and I'm going to say this very lightly, but there are a lot of attorneys that really play into people's emotions and use that as a means to um, make more money,
Yeah, I
unfortunately.
would agree with that.
So I do not do that. I consider myself a very good human. And I do this because I truly care about people, which is why I also get appointed by judges to represent children. Um, but you need to regulate your emotion, and you need to work with an attorney that understands the roller coasters of emotions and the different ways in which you are going to experience emotion to help you navigate. And then, which is something completely above and beyond my pay grade, is back to the therapeutic aspect of, having a therapist that you can speak to, discuss things, help work through the way that you're feeling. And there's nothing wrong with, how you're feeling or why you're feeling the things that you are, but it's a means to cope through the changes, the big changes that are occurring.
Okay, well, first of all, I think you're a good person too. Uh, I've known you
Thank
for
you.
5 years, and But I want to make another suggestion to people listening. Yes, I agree with Tiffany that therapy is very, very important because if you can cope with your emotions through therapy and try to heal that way, you'll be more rational in making decisions for the divorce. But divorce coaching is, I cannot even tell you how much I believe that everyone getting divorced should have a divorce coach because what these divorce coaches do is they will help you and talk to you very different than therapy. And they'll say, what is it that you want? What are your goals? Now, your divorce attorney is going to ask you that also, but the divorce coach is going to help you with your way of thinking so that you can get what you want, so that you make better decisions, so you don't have an outburst in mediation. So they really are valuable and it's so worth the money. Like people say to me like, "Oh, a divorce coach, it's just more money." I think that let's say it costs 3,600 or 4,000 for a divorce coach. That money is going to help you so much that you'll probably end up getting it all back in money that you wouldn't have gotten or money that you saved because you were more rational and you made better decisions. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think that there are great resources out there depending on what it is that you need, and some people need to go the divorce coach route. Some people need to go the therapeutic route. Some
Or
people
both.
or both. Yeah. Some people, like I kind of do um not obviously therapy because I'm again it's above my pay grade, but you know, I help work with them to provide a really good solid knowledge base because I feel like a lot of emotion is really derived from the lack of knowledge of the process. So I do spend time educating kind of like a divorce 101. And I feel like that really helps. And people tell me all the time, oh my God, I feel so much better after talking to you. It's like, oh, well, thanks.
I
So
could see that.
thanks. Yeah. I mean, it's I think all of these great resources are out there. I think if you don't know, I think you should at least have a consultation and just hear about it.
Absolutely. Okay, we're sort of running out of time, but I want to get to a couple more. Another huge mistake, forgetting that emails, text messages, and records can be tracked and used against you. Have you ever seen this happen?
Every single day. Every day. Absolutely. And even so, with if you do have children, you might not be familiar with these apps, Talking Parents, Our Family Wizard. They are specifically designed on purpose to track everything that you do and you say and what you put in there with timestamps and whether you read it or didn't. And so you have to be careful if you don't have these apps or if you don't have children or whatever it may be, any text message, any email, anything that you put in writing will be used against you.
Excellent advice. Just keep that in mind if you're listening at all times. And what I tell people is if you get this text from your ex and you want to answer it with four-letter words and you want to call them every name in the book, you can write it, but do not send it. Just write it down, journal it, say how you feel, and just wait a day and then hit respond with something entirely different that you know a judge and his lawyer are going to see. Because one text even can make you look unstable. It can make you look like you're not fit to be a parent. It can make you look like you're an alcoholic if you say something and you could say anything that could paint you in a bad light, and we don't wanna do that, so you have to be very careful, and I remember when I was going through my divorce, I almost felt like I was on trial. I was so afraid to do anything because I was afraid that my kids were gonna be taken away from me. I mean, like, I was being dramatic and going to the worst case scenario, but if you, you know if you feel like you're walking on eggshells because it's a scary, precarious time, and you know that you're sort of being watched by judges, and you're in a battle with somebody who wants you to fail,
You
And
are
so
under a microscope.
I, I
yes,
I
completely.
mean, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right, last one is comparing your case to your friends' divorces. I wrote a whole article on that, how why you shouldn't do that. Why shouldn't you do that?
I mean, we could probably do a whole separate
Right.
podcast just on this alone, but every case is very different. It could be even if you, let's say hypothetically, had the same assets as somebody else and the same debts as somebody else. The way that that case may have gone about throughout the court and the way that your case may go are two very different things. Your spouse may say there's no agreement, where the other people, they had an agreement on all of the issues, although it was exactly the same. Let's call them apples. All the apples were the same and you have the same apples, but your spouse is different. So even, we're not saying it's just not going to be the same. And it really will drive you nuts. You will talk about emotion and the way that you feel and all of the other things going on, and you start to compare and think that your case is like that case when it's not, and the judges are different, and all of the things are just very, very different. So don't put yourself through that, you know?
And if
You
and to people listening, if anybody says to you like, "I can't believe that's all you're getting. So and so got so much more." That person doesn't know anything either. So, how many people would say like, "Oh, you don't have a good you must not have a good lawyer." Do you know how many people said that to me when I was getting divorced? And like, I don't know if I had a lawyer. I didn't know you, Tiffany. So, well, you were probably still in law school. Well, it was 20 years ago. So yeah. But people would say like, "Oh, well, you must not have a very good lawyer." Well, how the heck do they know anything about the case? They're not even in the legal profession. So, it's easy to blame the lawyer or say, "Oh, you must have gotten a bad judge," or whatever. Every case is unique. You focus on you. Don't worry about your friends. Focus on your goals and getting the best possible divorce outcome for yourself.
Yeah, and stop hanging around those people that are making those comments.
Absolutely. Tiffany, thank you so much. What a great conversation. I think we really helped a lot of people today.
I sure hope so. And, if anybody has any questions or needs anything or wants to have a consult, I'm happy to, walk through things with them. Just keep in mind during consultations, I cannot provide legal advice because I don't represent you. I'm happy to go over things and discuss, general questions that you have and see how maybe I can help.
Well, I would highly recommend Tiffany. I've known her for a long time, and I think you're really wonderful and very dedicated to this. So thanks again, Tiffany.
Thank you, Jackie.
You can find Tiffany at thughewslaw.com. You can also find her in the trusted professional section of Divorced Girl Smiling, which is divorcedgirlsmiling.com. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. We'll talk to you real soon.